All right, part 2. Same thing. Set these equal to 0. So these cancel. I would get 5x squared plus 10x minus 2 equals 0. Because this is not a 1, we're going to use quadratic formula. So negative b would be negative 10 plus or minus square root of b squared, which would be 100, minus 4 times a times c. Don't forget that little negative there. All over 2a, which is 10. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 2 is 40. These two negatives make a positive, so this would be 140, the square root of 140. Now, I know the square root of 140 can be broken down to 4 and 35. So this would turn into negative 10 plus or minus, the square root of 4 is 2, square root of 35 all over 10. And you can look and see that a 2 comes out of all of these. So that'd be negative 5 plus or minus 1 square root of 35 all over 5. Done. Number 10 looks a little different than any previous problem. We don't like that 7, so we're going to get rid of it. So don't worry about that 10. So these would cancel, which is good, but then I have to multiply that side by 7. So this side just turns into 4x squared plus 3 equals 14x. So I'm going to subtract 14x, subtract 14x, 4x squared minus 14x plus 3 equals 0. I'm just going to go right to the quadratic formula and see what happens. So the opposite of b would be 14 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 196 minus 4 times a times c over 2a, which would be 8. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 3 is 48. 196 minus 48 would be 14 plus or minus the square root of 148. I think. Yep, all over 8. Now, 4 goes into 148. So 14 plus or minus, I'm going to break down the square root of 148 to 4 and 37, which would be 2 square root of 37 all over 8. Notice you can divide all these by 2. So I get 7 plus or minus the square root of 37 all over 4. And there it is. All right, back side. Remember, the third part of Unit 7 was determining the nature of the roots. So the first thing we have to discover is, are they going to be real or imaginary? Then the next thing is rational or irrational. And then equal or not equal. So, how do we do all this? Well, this is going to lean heavy on your understanding of the quadratic formula. So because this is already set equal to 0, a is 1, b is 6, c is negative 2, we're going to stuff it in here. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 36, minus 4 times a times c all over 2a, which is 2. Now, the truth of the matter is, all of this hinges on only this. And there are a lot of teachers that don't even worry about this and this, but I like to see personally the big picture. It helps me understand the whole problem. But this is really where the meat and potatoes are. So if I whittled that down, it'd be 36 minus, or actually plus 8, which would be 44. Now, a lot of you want to break that down, but don't. This is going to tell us, is this real or imaginary? It's real, because there's no negative square root. Is it rational or irrational? It's irrational. How come? Because it's not a perfect square root. Are my answers going to be equal or not equal? Well, think about it. Negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 44 over 2. Those are two totally different things. Not equal. Let's go on to the next one. Here's my A, here's my B, here's my C. So negative B plus or minus square root of b squared, which is 81 minus 4 times a times c all over 2a, which is 14. Again, we just concentrate on this, but it's nice to see the big picture. But if I whittled that down, it'd be 28 times 2 is 56. So it's really 81 minus 56, which is 25. Now, is it real or imaginary? It's real. And by the way, the roots are talking about the whole thing, but we can get our answer from just what's called the discriminant. So this is real. Rational or irrational, because this is a perfect square root, it's going to be rational. And are my answers going to be equal or not equal? Well, it's the same thing as 9 plus or minus 5 all over 14. Well, 9 plus 5 over 14 is different than 9 minus 5 over 14. So they are not equal. That's all they really want you to do on this stuff. So here's my A. A is 1. B is negative 5. C is 10. So negative b would be actually positive 5 plus or minus the square root of b squared, 25 minus 4 times a times c all over 2a, which is 2. Now I want you to really look at this and remember what we talked about in class. If we whittled that down, we get 25 minus 40, which is negative 15. We could stop right now, like I said in class. This is an imaginary number, and if it's an imaginary number, you can just go right to the answer, imaginary conjugates, and be done. It's just what you do. Let's go on to this one. A is 2, B is negative 6, C is negative 5, so negative b would be 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2a, which would be 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. These two would make a positive. So this discriminant part would give me the square root of 40 plus this, which is 76. We can analyze it by saying, all right, I know it's real. I know it's irrational because it's not a perfect square root, and then I know that they are not going to be equal. All right, number 15. A is 2, B is negative 6, C is 5. So negative b would be 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2a, which would be 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 36 minus 40 would give me the square root of a negative 4. As soon as you see it's an imaginary number, you can answer it by saying imaginary conjugates. All right. And again, where does the word conjugate come from? Right here. All right. Last one. So A is 4, B is negative 12, C is 9. So negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a, which is 8. 9 times 4 is 36. 36 times 4 is 144. So we have 144 minus 144. So we end up getting the square root of 0. This is the tricky one. We learned it in class. Let's go through the checklist. Are our answers going to be real or imaginary? Well, because there's no negative under the square root, it's real. Are our answers going to be rational or irrational? Well, the square root of 0 is rational. And then are our answers equal or not equal? And if you are not in class to understand it, whenever you get the square root of 0, that's the only time your answers are going to be equal. But there's a big reason for it, but now is not the time to reteach it because it takes a while. All right. If you have any questions, let me know. But good luck on your test.